today, Secretary of State John Kerry said this.
Truth is that notwithstanding the threat of ISIL, notwithstanding people being beheaded publicly and burned publicly and the atrocities that they are perpetrating, and it is a serious, serious challenge to us, notwithstanding that, there is actually less threat and less probability of people dying in some sort of violent conflict today than at any time in human history.
Really? Mark Thiessen joins us. He's former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. How can John Kerry say that, Mark?
What on earth is he talking about? I mean, that is just absurd. I mean, put aside all the things that you showed on your air. 200,000 people have died in Syria while this administration stood on the sidelines and did nothing. I mean, he says it's less likely than ever that someone's going to get killed in a conflict. Tell that to the families of the Americans who were beheaded by ISIS. Tell that to the family of Kayla Mueller. Tell that to the families in Paris who lost people in that kosher deli and in Charlie Hebdo. Tell that to the 21 Egyptian Christians who were beheaded in Egypt, or the family of that Jordanian pilot who was burned in a cage. What on earth is the Secretary of State of the United States of America talking about?
I mean, it's at the very least, it's very insensitive for the very reasons that you just pointed out, Mark, the enormous amount of tragedy and heartache. I mean, can you imagine King Abdullah saying that, given what his country had to witness? Can you imagine General Sisi saying that, given what his people are going through? But it's not the first time that we've heard that kind of language. We've heard the president downplay this time and time again in terms of where the real threat lies from this group. We heard Josh Earnest back in July say that, you know, the administration has improved the tranquility of the global situation. So obviously, this line of thinking that, you know, really, when you put it all in perspective, it's not that bad, is part of their mantra.
I mean, they don't take the threat seriously. It's the only thing you conclude from it. It's not just one flub. This is a constant mantra we're getting from this administration. And the reality is that the threat we face today is worse and more dangerous than the threat we faced before 9/11. I mean, if you think about it, before 9/11, we faced a threat from one terror network, Al-Qaeda, that was located in one country. Today, you've got ISIS, you've got core Al-Qaeda, you've got ISIS, you've got Al-Qaeda's affiliates, and they're all competing for leadership of the jihadi movement. And they're not in one country. They're in Syria, they're in Iraq, they're in Yemen, they're in Somalia, they're in Libya. They're all over the world, and they have said clearly, the leader of ISIS has said, we are coming after you. The day is coming. My message to the Americans is, we will be in direct conflict, and the Sons of Islam have prepared for this day. What part of this do they not get?
Yeah, there's an end of days story that they're watching play out and they're marking time with in all of this. I mean, did you ever think, Mark, when you were growing up, that you would live in a world where you would see things on television like a man being burned in a cage or people being beheaded up and down the beach? I think people are so unnerved, and justifiably so, by the images that we are all, you know, forced to absorb. I mean, and that's all we have to do so far is absorb them. It's mind-blowing what we're watching playing out in the world. And to hear John Kerry say that is just bizarre.
It is bizarre, but it's not just bizarre, it's dangerous. It shows a lack of appreciation of the threat we face. I mean, the American people are way ahead of this administration in terms of their perception of the threat, and they have to take this threat seriously. When the enemy says, we are going to be in conflict, you have to take the words of the enemy seriously. We didn't take the words of Osama bin Laden seriously in the 1990s, and 9/11 was the price we paid. We cannot afford to make that same mistake again.
Very true. Mark, thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.
So my next guest will be